Hi everybody, it is a beautiful day today and I wanted to sit down and have a more casual kind of chat about something that I'm sure if you follow me is actually one of your biggest questions. It's probably the reason you found me in the first place. And that is, why am I so stuck right now? Why am I experiencing this much heartbreak? Because we all know not everyone experiences heartbreak the same way. You might have a best friend who broke up and in 2 weeks' time, she's having the time of her life. She's out there living her life, her best ever life, and you feel like the rug has been ripped out from underneath you and you're falling down Alice in Wonderland's little rabbit hole into a world of weirdness that makes no sense to you. You're feeling this desire for a person, regardless if you logically believe that they are right for you, like almost you can't live without them or you need them. You might find yourself compromising yourself, just giving up your dignity to another person, maybe begging them to have you back, messaging them when they've said they don't want to speak to you, or messaging them when they've rejected you and saying that you'll change, I'll do whatever you want, I'll change, when you don't really see what you needed to change. You're just compromising yourself, trying to do whatever it takes to get this person back. Or maybe if you're not doing that, you're just obsessed, hooked on the idea of them. It is an absolute compulsion to check their social media. And when you see their social media, it might be devastating to you, and yet you can't help doing it. It makes no sense. Maybe you've even broken up before and been okay. In a couple of weeks' time, you're doing well, you're on dating sites, actually maybe even excited about seeing other people, but this time you're just in tatters. Many women tell me that they feel like they've lost themselves. So why is this happening? And often when we have these conversations, inevitably comes back to this idea of a trauma bond, because that really explains a lot of this, but sometimes trauma bond doesn't explain it. Sometimes relationship wasn't that volatile, or it wasn't that up and down, or it wasn't, identifiably abusive, and yet the person is experiencing similar symptoms. So what's happening and why would that be? Now, as an associated therapist, part of what I have to do is continue my professional development. So I do that in ways that I have to, like taking additional trainings and courses. At the moment, I'm doing an incredible one on the psychology of rejection with leading psychologists. But sometimes I just do research because I want the answers to these questions. And so I'll listen to a variety of sources and I'll listen to opinions. And I've been listening to a lot of opinions on this issue, trying to myself develop my own understanding of why this is happening for you. And it's interesting because when I have seen the answers given, especially when it comes from coaches and people whose, I suppose, way of handling situation is by providing their perspective. One thing that they often say is, it's your mindset. It's the way you're thinking about it. That's a problem. And if you just change the way you're thinking about it, you won't have this problem. Now, I'm a psychotherapist. I use psychoeducation. I use reframing. They are incredible tools. They are important. And so often it is the case that if we update our thinking, if we change the way we're viewing a situation, we can have such great improvement. That's why I do YouTube videos, because that's part of what YouTube videos, lives, and all this kind of thing give to people is the opportunity to change their mindset. However, it's not always the case. It kind of reminds me of if you have ever been to the doctor with a symptom, a bad symptom of something, and they've run some tests and they can't kind of figure out what's going on. And so you get an answer like, it's stress, you're overweight, it's your age, you're over this age threshold now, so now you're going to have these terrible problems. You're like, okay, I can kind of see how that might be true sometimes, and I can see how, my stomach issues get worse when I'm stressed out. But it feels like there's more to it, and that feels like such a patronizing and simplistic answer. You know that there is something going on. And it could be the case if you have a gut issue that stress exacerbates it. And it could be the case that doing the things that they tell you to do, like exercising and doing a meditation, help. But that's because stress is exacerbating the problem. It's not the problem itself. And if all you do is exercise and meditate, but you are allergic to fructose, then every single time you eat something with onion in it, which is most things, you're going to experience that crippling pain. And that's what I think happens here, because here is what I have learned through talking to person after person after person with this problem, is some people have the right mindsets. They know the issue. If I tried to explain it to them, I'd be patronizing them, because they know. They're the one telling me in advance, before I can give them the correct mindset, what they already know to be true. They might be saying to me, I can't make sense of this because I don't actually want to be with this person. This person makes me miserable. This relationship was never going to work out. I know if I go back to them, it won't work out. We can't make our lives be compatible. This person will never give me what I want. Or maybe it is just that the relationship itself doesn't function. And sometimes in the most extreme cases, it is that the person is very abusive. And so they know. They have the mindset. They know that they deserve better already. And we could say, oh, it's it's what's happening in the unconscious. And it really can be. I mean, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. Do you think I don't believe in the unconscious mind and unconscious thoughts and unconscious beliefs? Of course I do. But I'm not limited by them. I can see that sometimes there is more going on with a person. So it's interesting when I researched this further. And it's funny how this links back to that idea of a trauma bond and what happens in the brain, the chemical thing. When they have studied brain scans of people experiencing a breakup who are struggling and people coming off a cocaine addiction, the same changes have occurred in the brain. And what's interesting is that there were studies done on heroin addicts and how when they were sent to fight in the Vietnam War, when they came back, they were no longer addicted to heroin, unlike most people, where there was this idea that a heroin addiction back then was unbreakable. And this, they figured, had something to do with environment and the brain, and the way our brain becomes conditioned to certain reward or stabilizing chemicals. And it's kind of like when I studied alcohol dependency. What I didn't know before I started studying it was that the reason why people are so addicted to alcohol is because when they have the alcohol, well, they get a hormonal response from the alcohol, which disrupts the way that their brain regulates itself. And what happens is the brain starts to need the response it gets from alcohol to balance itself out. It starts to no longer be able to do it for itself. And that's how kind of all kinds of addiction work. But here's what happens when you are getting so much of your life's pleasure and enjoyment and happiness from another person, love, is that your brain starts to take that reward chemical that balances you out, that makes you feel good from the other person in the relationship. It's not always just in the case of a trauma bundle where a relationship is really dramatic and it really volatile and really up and down. That intensifies it. That causes that extreme thing that we call a trauma bond. But it also just happens when our life is so intertwined and our joy is so much taken from another person that we have kind of almost lost who we are independently and lost our ways of enjoying our life and being fulfilled, so that we are getting it from a relationship. Because when that has happened, the relationship doesn't need to have been abusive or volatile or anything to have been wrong with it, really. All that needs to have taken place is that our joy came from that. We didn't know any longer how to find joy in ourselves. Our brain stopped knowing how to do it, and our brain has become dependent on that other person. In the same way, exactly the same way, chemically, neurologically, the same way as it would if we were addicted to alcohol, cocaine, or heroin. And that is why people often tell me they feel like they have lost themselves. They lost themselves in a relationship, or now that a relationship is over, they feel lost. And so it was interesting in the studies about the Vietnam veterans who completely recovered from heroin. What they took from that is that we rely so much on our environment and our surrounds to determine how we feel and our stimulus and our inputs. When you take a person outside of that and their environment is completely different, they draw upon new sources. They stop relying on those old things. They break down essentially those neurological pathways and those dependencies. And so they said that the cure for a heartbreak was to go on a eat, pray, love style vacation. Now that's a lovely idea. It may not be at the time in the world for an eat, pray, love vacation. But is that the only answer? I don't really think that it is. I think that the theory was there. Sometimes when we see an answer to a problem, we think that that is the answer. But I think the answer is getting back the thing that we lost in the first place, which was ourselves. If you are not finding joy within yourself in your own life, if you've lost your sense of self, if you've given too much over to someone else, then the answer to heartbreak, the real answer, I believe, is to connect with yourself again. To stop looking outside of you for those sources of joy, and when you're feeling that desperate need from that something from someone to give you a good feeling, look into your own life for other ways that you can give that to you. So maybe it is a vacation. Right now, it might be learning something new. It may be spending time with friends. You're taking your dog for a walk. It might be just engaging in an activity that is joyful to you. But what is really important is to begin to really commit to yourself, to start to cut off your dependencies from those other things that were giving you those sources of joy. That's why we say go no contact. You may need to shut down your social media accounts. I say that as my platform is social media because I believe that. It might be just blocking that person altogether, and a lot of people are so afraid to do that, and that's the fear of letting go, I think. But whatever it is, the environmental factor that is keeping you stuck, it's really important to start to no longer allow that to be your environmental input. Find new ones. Find ones that you can sustain on your own. Start to find you again. If you're watching this, I believe you've already started. If you're in my group, I know you're working on it daily. Once you find you again, well, not only are you going to become unstuck, no longer obsessed with that person, no longer dependent on that person, it'll become much less likely that you will ever get into a situation again where you are so consumed by another person that you lose yourself. What I hope for you and what I teach to my clients is that the next relationship you have will be so joyful and fulfilling, yes, because you keep yourself within it. They keep their self in the relationship. You keep yourself in your relationship. You come together as a couple and enhance each other's life rather than becoming each other's life. So that's all I have to say about this. I hope this has been helpful, informative, educational. Remember, if you would like to work on your unique and specific situation, I am available for one-on-one coaching. If you're not already in my Facebook group, please do join it. I'll put the links for that below. We talk about these things every day. There's tons of inspiration. You can start taking these little steps to finding yourself again and getting you back. Within that group, there are so many inspirational sources to do that, and so many ways to connect with other people who really understand what you're going through and experiencing. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next